do. So I'm going to bring back Rachel Russell, who's the head of regional advice here at Foundations and is leading the Housing Without Delay project, or kind of Without Delay Part 3. After minor adaptations without delay, we now have Housing Without Delay. So over to you, Rachel.
Yeah, well, welcome to everybody. It's great to see the big audience that we've got, which hopefully demonstrates the value that people will hopefully see in the project that we're doing with the Royal College of Occupational Therapists. What I'm going to do for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes is just take you through what the project's about, what the intended outputs are, and take you on the journey that we plan with Housing Without Delay. Just to set the context, you'll all be very, very familiar with kind of these stats here. We all know that we've got an ageing population, we've got a population that is growing. It's a population, as I mentioned, is ageing, but also people with more and more complex health and social care needs. I don't need to tell you as a sector the challenges that we have in terms of that ageing population. We know that there is this ambition that the government has in terms of building, I think it's about 4 million new homes, but I think also that opportunity that we've got in terms of building homes that hopefully support people in terms of ageing well and supporting people in terms of their health and well-being. And we've got a real opportunity as occupational therapists to kind of contribute to that agenda, as well as that housing agenda overall in terms of looking at housing supports health and well-being in general. I think, obviously, my role at Foundations, I think it is changing, but I think at times we see OTs in social care and in housing possibly still as the people that get involved in providing the equipment and adaptations. And I know when myself and Marnie Walker, that was part of the Housing Link team that developed Housing Without Delay, what we really wanted to make really clear is, occupational therapy is much more than just recommending equipment and adaptations. Our expertise is understanding how housing is impacting on health and well-being. But I still think there is that perception from some areas that OTs are just involved in equipment provision and adaptation provision, and it is much more than that. We also know that housing is such a key determinant of health and well-being. We know if we don't get housing right, that actually what consequences that can have in terms of not only health, but in employment, kids being able to access education, etc. But I think in terms of thinking about housing as a key determinant of health, perhaps that as occupational therapists, we're not perhaps being fully utilised, and that there is so much more opportunities that we could be offering in terms of looking at that public health agenda and housing as that key determinant of health. And just the skills of OTs being underutilised within housing. So that's the kind of challenge that we have. But we've also got an absolutely, as occupational therapists, we've got an absolutely fabulous opportunity because last year ARCOT published their workforce strategy for the next 10 years. And for somebody who has always worked, I spent a little time as a basic grade OT working in a hospital environment, but the majority of my career has been out in the community. So it's really positive to see that evolution that the workforce strategy talks about placing OTs where we really need to be, and that's where people living in their communities, living in their homes. So what we see with that workforce strategy in terms of that opportunity is getting OTs out where we should be, working with people in their homes, in their communities, being a champion for housing and providing health and well-being. So what we talk about as occupational therapists, we call that occupational justice, and really putting occupation at the forefront of what we do. So, the one thing that we do in all our homes are those everyday activities that we want, need and have to do. And housing plays such a crucial part in us being able to successfully undertake those those activities. So just in terms of the vision, so myself, you'll see a recording in about 20 minutes that myself, Jill and Shane, a couple of the other OTs that are involved in the project, we sat and talked about, what is the vision that we have taken on board ARCOT's workforce strategy vision. And we talked about actually what do we want to be different 5-6 years down the line from housing without delay. And this is what we kind of said is that what we want from housing without delay, building on that workforce strategy, is that occupational therapists are recognised as essential partners in creating housing that supports health and well-being and improves health outcomes for all, that occupational justice bit that we talk about as occupational therapy. So for us, that's what we see as how we're taking that vision that ARCOT has in the workforce strategies and bringing it alive to housing without delay. What we're doing with housing without delay, and Paul's already alluded to this, is that the Royal College has always championed housing in a variety of ways. Back nearly 20 years ago, we had minor adaptations without delay, and the focus of that document was around how we can work with housing associations to provide minor adaptations themselves, kind of enabling them to provide minor works, minor adaptations for their tenants. So rather than their tenants sat on a social care waiting list, that document empowered housing associations to do things differently and for them to assess and prescribe minor adaptations. And then 6 years ago, back in 2019, I was part of that team alongside Marnie Walker and Housing Lynn that worked with ARCOT on adaptations without delay. And that was really kind of saying around what we want to ensure as occupational therapists is that we don't delay people accessing those vital solutions, adaptations that people need to keep well in their own homes. So adaptations without delay provided that framework around the types of cases where occupational therapists very much add value to those individuals that need that expertise in terms of understanding how their home environment is impacting on health and well-being, and then those cases where we can work alongside our home improvement agency colleagues, our housing colleagues, our technical officer colleagues to do things differently with those more straightforward cases so that people can access those solutions much quicker rather than being unnecessarily sat on social care waiting lists. I think it's testament to ARCOT that those documents are still in use. So I know myself and the other regional advisors still refer to minor adaptations without delay. We very much use adaptations without delay to have conversations with systems, with local authorities that are really wanting to do things differently to get those adaptations to people quicker. And those documents are key documents that we certainly use at Foundations to support the work that we do in helping local authorities look at how we do things differently. So housing with delay is very much building on that legacy that ARCOT has in terms of housing and how we enable people to get really good access to housing solutions. So I've kind of talked a little bit about that vision. So I guess what we're trying to do, I've said this already, so I won't say it again, but it is about we want to move from OTs do adaptations to OTs transform housing outcomes. And I think this bit is really important. And I've actually added this bit after the comma here, because I know Lauren from ARCOT very much talks about actually we can only do this in terms of transforming housing outcomes for older and disabled people when we are working alongside and in partnership with the housing sector. Now, the housing sector is huge, and I know looking at the number of people we've got and the names of people we've got here, I know we've got HIA managers, we've got technical officers, we've got caseworkers, and I know that as an occupational therapist, I couldn't do the work that I do and achieve the outcomes that I achieved when I was practicing in social care without working alongside the fantastic housing partners that we've got out there in terms of HIA managers. So Housing Without Delay is about OT transforming out housing outcomes, but it is very much in mind that we do that in partnership with the rest of the housing sector. We are planning, and I'm going to come on to this, and the way that we're going to kind of hopefully transform that is developing 3 distinct resources, toolkits to support that journey of transformation. I've just put this slide here because what I just want to give people here this afternoon is a little bit of reassurance that we are not creating new roles. The work that we did with Adaptations Without Delay, I think the reason it was quite powerful is that what we were able to use were real live case studies of really good work that was already happening out there to make best use of OT skills. And what we know is across the UK, we have got OTs either working in social care and partnering with housing, or we've actually got OTs working in housing already that is doing this work. So what we're trying to do is not reinvent the wheel and actually using the brilliant work that is already going on out there in practice to really demonstrate if you use occupational therapists in housing, these are the fabulous outcomes that we can achieve. So we've already got some fantastic OTs out there that are shaping housing policy at both a local and national level, and influencing that local and national policy around housing that supports ageing in place and people with long-term conditions. We've got fabulous OTs. I've done a number of interviews and I've done a couple of site visits with Kel Runnels and Rachel Wooden in try to remember which local, Wandsworth, I think, and I apologise if I've got that wrong. I've also been to Leeds and spent time with the housing OT in Leeds, Jenny, and they're doing some fabulous work in terms of contributing to new build housing design, because what we know is if we actually get the design of the home right, we support people to age in place and accommodate people's needs as that might change through ill health, etc. So we've already got OTs in housing already doing that, working alongside developers, etc., getting that new build right. Alongside that, OTs that are working with regeneration teams within local authorities, again, when they're doing upgrades to council properties, again, looking at how can we take that opportunity around regeneration to get that scheme right so that we can have properties that really support health and well-being. And this then reduces that burden on social care, because if we can reduce disability but through good design, it means that has less impact on social care. We've got OTs that are doing some fabulous work around asset management and making sure that we're optimising housing stock allocation. So a huge amount of positive work being done around that. We've got a number of mental health OTs who are supporting tenants that may be at risk of losing their tenancy. So again, that wide role that we can have as occupational therapists. I spoke to a principal occupational therapist up in Milton Keynes, James, and he's doing some fabulous work with their homelessness team to ensure that they're working with those vulnerable, older and disabled homelessness people to get that housing right and to hopefully get them people that are homeless into long-term accommodation. Huge amount of work that is under for people who are autistic, who are neurodivergent. Again, I think, the evidence base around understanding how the sensory aspects of our home environment really impacts on those of us who might be neurodivergent or autistic. And again, occupational therapists are doing lots of work around that. So as I say, what we're trying not to do is we're not reinventing the wheel. It's about using the changes that we've got in policy that we'll talk about shortly, alongside what is already being done to help overcome some of those challenges that we've got. So the plan is that we're going to develop 3 toolkits, 3 resources. So I'll just quickly talk about those resources. We've got Jo who will be talking next, because Jo has got a very challenging task around writing the strategic document, which is an influencing document that we're writing. So that first toolkit or resource is an influencing document. It is targeted at, in England, ICS leaders and the equivalent type of high-level system leaders in health and social care across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. It's targeted at public health directors and the vast range of commissioners that we've got across the system. And again, what Jo is doing with that document is providing that evidence base, telling that story around actually how using occupational therapists can support those leaders in tackling some of the opportunities that we've got with government policy, that shift in terms of integration, that shift from sickness to prevention, helping those high-level system leaders to understand what occupational therapists do and how we are and can contribute to that housing agenda. The operational toolkit that we'll be shortly moving on to in the next month or so is a bit of an implementation guide. So this implementation guide is going to be for principal OT, HIA managers, NHS AHP equivalent in our other 3 nations, and managers about actually, if we're going to work differently, if we're going to perhaps get an OT working in with planners within the local authority, or if we're going to get OTs working alongside, more embedded in HIAs, etc., how do we go about that? How do we look at the funding? What job descriptions do we need? So it's going to be very much an implementation guide for for those people to do. To hopefully help them on that journey around, making those changes that we'd like to see. And then the practitioner toolkit, I guess, is the way that we see it at the moment is for frontline occupational therapists, frontline resources that targets OTs, helps them understand or provides those really useful resources in terms of if they want to move into housing. So we've not yet moved on to that. But that's what we intend to do with that practitioner toolkit. Perhaps provide a bit of a pathway, a roadmap around what that career journey might look like if an occupational therapist does want to move into housing. But I think the other thing that we need to do with that toolkit is about reminding all occupational therapists, no matter whether you work in acute hospital settings, whether you're a part of a community rehab team, whether you're part of a PCN primary care network or the equivalent up across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, that yes, you might not be working in housing and social care, but we can all be having really good conversations with people about how their homes, how housing can support their housing needs, and all taking a bit of a responsibility so that as occupational therapists, we're not passing people unnecessarily from one service to another. So again, that's hopefully what we want to achieve with that practitioner toolkit, getting all OTs to think about actually what conversations can I be having in the role that I have in X, Y and Z setting. Just to say that I just want to show you, we have got a steering group. So the steering group is there for us as a project team to ensure that we're heading in the right direction, that the resources that we will produce in terms of that strategic influencing document, the operational toolkit, is hitting the right notes, as it were. And I think hopefully you can see the range of people that we've got as part of the steering group, and I hopefully that gives you some reassurance that actually it's not just about occupational therapies, but there is a recognition that across health, social care, across different governmental departments, housing organisations such as CIH, etc., that we have got individuals that are also passionate and also recognise the value that occupational therapists have in housing. So I think it's really positive that the project, has been seen as really important from a wide range of organisations that want to make this project a success as well. So just to finish up around how you can support and how you can get involved, if you, whether you're an occupational therapist or whether you're a HIA manager, if you are already doing some innovative work that involves occupational therapists in housing, please get in touch. Because again, as I've mentioned in the previous slide, we're not reinventing the wheel. What we want to do is show how we're already dealing with some of the opportunities that changes in policy legislation has brought, and how occupational therapists are being used. So I'll bring up my email address in a minute to show how you can get in contact with us. So if you've got any really good examples, even if you're not quite sure, I think it's to do with housing, just get in contact and we can have a conversation with you. We're particularly interested in if you're an AHP lead or a housing lead across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, that is looking at how we embed OTs in terms of that housing agenda, or if you recognise the value that OTs have, but you're not quite sure how to do it. If you can get in contact, because one, it'd be great to see how you're planning to use OTs, but also if we understand some of your challenges, we can then obviously ensure that the operational, strategic and practitioner toolkits address those issues that you might be experiencing. Again, link to sharing your ideas. If you employ OTs in housing, again, get in contact with us so that we can just understand some of those practical ways in which you've kind of been able to go about that. And again, if you've experienced any barriers in terms of employing OTs, doing things differently, then again, please get in contact with us, because we can have that conversation and we can ensure that when we're developing the toolkits, the resources that we address those issues that are out there in terms of people doing things differently. Just in terms of where you can find, we're doing lots of bits and pieces on social media. So if you're on LinkedIn, if you join our foundation's page, we every 3 or 4 weeks, I'm posing different questions across various social media channels. So if you can respond to those questions I'm putting on there, that would be fabulous. I forgot to put Lauren's email address on here, but if you want to share some of your examples, if you can email myself or Lauren Walker, and I'm sure we can put Lauren's email address in the chat box so people can see that there. Again, please, just reiterating what I've just said on the previous slide, if you're doing stuff, if you're driving integration, please get in touch with us, tell us what you're doing, and we can incorporate those bits and pieces into our how-to guide. And then what I would say is my final plea, those of you that are occupational therapists out there, perhaps that aren't currently working in traditional roles in housing, is please embrace when the various resources come out, please embrace the message that we are trying to get across is that for all occupational therapists, the one thing that we have in common is the people that you are working with live in a home. Now, it might not be their choice of home, but they all live in a home, and we've all got an opportunity to have really good housing conversations that helps us, perhaps signpost people through to our housing colleagues, or to have those conversations about how their homes could be different to support their health and well-being, rather than just referring people onto social care or housing. So that's my final bit for today. So hopefully that gives people an understanding of what we're trying to achieve with the project, and obviously we've given you our contact details if you want to share any of the good work that you're doing. So thanks. Over to you, Paul.